What would you do if your own family tried to steal your dream home? Scarlett Barrett spent 15 years building her success every late night, every sacrifice, all leading to her dream villa. But the day before her housewarming party, she walked in to find her sister planning a wedding in the home she built. Her parents? Fully supporting it. They decided I needed it more than you. They expected her to just accept it, to step aside like always. But this time, Scarlett wasn't backing down. Watch as she fights for what's hers, and don't forget to subscribe for more gripping stories. It's going to be the perfect wedding venue, don't you think? Jade's voice echoed through the marble foyer of my newly built villa. I stood frozen, key still in my hand, staring at her and the wedding planner as they casually discussed flower arrangements in my home the day before my housewarming party. My name is Scarlett Barrett, and at 35, I had finally built my dream home, a luxury villa overlooking the city's most exclusive neighborhood. After 15 years of clawing my way up in real estate development, living in tiny apartments, saving every penny, sacrificing sleep, relationships, everything I had created something magnificent. Every detail, from the curved staircase to the infinity pool, had been personally overseen by me. This was supposed to be my moment. Jade, what are you doing here? I managed to keep my voice steady, though my hands were shaking. The housewarming isn't until tomorrow. She turned to me with that familiar, condescending smile, the one she'd perfected since childhood. Oh, Liv, didn't Mom and Dad tell you? They're giving me the villa as my wedding gift. It's perfect for starting a family, don't you think? The room started spinning. What are you talking about? This is my house. I built it. Well, technically, Jade drawled. Dad helped with the permits and some connections, so really it's a family project. And since I'm getting married next month, they decided I needed it more than you do. You're still single, after all. Before I could respond, my parents walked in through the open door. My mother was already directing the wedding planner on where to put the altar. My father, avoiding my gaze, trailed behind her like an afterthought. Mom, Dad, what is this? I demanded. Sweetheart, my mother began, using that overly sweet tone she always used before saying something awful. We thought it would be best this way. Jade and Cyan need somewhere to start their life together, and you're always so busy with work. You barely need more than your apartment. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I built this house. Every penny came from my savings. I designed it. I worked with the contractors. It's mine! My father finally spoke, his voice firm. Scarlett, don't be selfish. Your sister is getting married. This is about family. Family. The word hit like a slap. For years, I had watched as Jade got everything she wanted. The best schools, the fancy cars, the lavish weddings. Yes, this was her second. Meanwhile, I worked twice as hard, stayed focused, built my career from nothing. And now they expected me to hand over my dream home just because she wanted it? Get out, I said quietly. Don't be dramatic, Jade sighed. The wedding's in 4 weeks. We need to start decorating. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I knew by heart. Hello, Silver. Yes, it's Scarlett Barrett. I need you to send over all the construction receipts, contracts, and payment records for the villa project. Everything. Yes, right now. My father's face darkened. Scarlett, what are you doing? Protecting what's mine, I replied, my voice ice cold. You see, unlike Jade's first wedding venue that you paid for, or her failed business that you funded, or her luxury car that you bought, I paid for every brick, every tile, every fixture in this house, and I have proof. Jade's smug smile faltered slightly. Daddy, tell her to stop being difficult. My phone pinged with incoming emails. Ah, here we go, I said, opening the files. Full payment records, all from my personal accounts. Construction contracts, all in my name. Property deed, also in my name. And look, dated video logs of every site meeting I had with the contractors. Would you like to see yourself not being there for any of them? Jade, the wedding planner, sensing the tension, quietly excused herself. My mother started to say something, but I held up my hand. I spent my entire life watching you give Jade everything while I worked for scraps of approval, but this is too far. This house is mine. I earned it. And if any of you try to take it from me, I'll show everyone exactly how I built it alone." "You ungrateful child," my mother gasped. "After everything we've done for you." "Done for me?" I laughed bitterly. "Let's talk about what you've done for me. When I got into business school, you said you couldn't help with tuition because you were paying for Jade's third gap year in Europe. When I started my first job, you told everyone it was just a phase until I found a husband. Husband! When I made junior partner, you missed the celebration because Jade needed help picking out decor." My father stepped forward, his face red now. "Now listen here." "No, you listen." I cut him off. "Those permits you claim you helped with? I have the paperwork showing I obtained them through proper channels. Those connections you mention? Every contractor was hired through my company with documented bids. I made sure everything was by the book because I knew somehow you'd try to take credit for my success." Jade's face had lost its superior expression, replaced by something closer to panic. But Dad promised." "Dad had nothing to promise," I said firmly. "This property is legally mine. I have security cameras being installed Golden Aro. You have exactly 2 minutes to leave before I call the police and report you for trespassing." My mother burst into tears, her usual tactic when things didn't go her way. My father looked like he might explode, but Jade, dear Jade, tried one last time. "You can't do this to me," she whined. "What about my perfect wedding? What about my guests? What will people say?" I walked to the door and held it open. "They'll say you tried to steal your sister's house and failed. 1 minute left." They filed out, my mother still sobbing, my father silent, and Jade shooting me a look of pure venom. As they reached their car, I called out, "Oh, and Jade, consider this karma for trying to steal my college boyfriend, too. At least this time, you failed." The door closed with a satisfying click, and I leaned against it, finally letting out the breath I'd been holding. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone again. "Silver? Yes, I need one more thing. How quickly can we get the locks changed?" That evening, as I sat in my new kitchen, my kitchen, the texts started rolling in, flying monkeys right on schedule. From Mom, "How could you do this to your sister? Her wedding is ruined." From Dad, "We raised you better than this." From various relatives, "Family should come first. Why are you being so selfish? Just let her have her perfect day." I ignored them all and opened my laptop instead. Years of working in real estate had taught me to document everything, and now that instinct was paying off. I had spreadsheets tracking every payment, videos of every construction meeting, and most importantly, a paper trail proving that my parents had no financial involvement whatsoever. My phone rang. Jade again. Against my better judgment, I answered. What part of no was unclear? "You think you're so clever," she hissed, "but you're just jealous. Jealous that I'm getting married again while you're still alone. Jealous that Mom and Dad love me more. Jealous that—" "Jealous?" I cut her off with a laugh. "Jade, I'm not jealous. I'm successful. I built this house with my own money, run my own company, and don't need Mommy and Daddy's approval to validate my existence. But please tell me more about how I should be jealous of your second marriage to a man you met 3 months ago." She gasped, her voice dripping with outrage. "How dare you! Cyan and I are in love just like you and Auburn were in love before you cheated on him with his best friend. Or wait, was that your first fiancé? Golden? You bitter, lonely. Goodbye, Jade. Don't forget to return the wedding planner's deposit. I hear they're strict about refunds." I ended the call and immediately blocked her number. Then, for good measure, I blocked my parents' numbers too. Let them scream into the void. I had better things to do. The flying monkeys could wait. I had a housewarming party to prepare for. The next morning, I woke in my new master bedroom to the sound of the security company arriving to install cameras. As I watched them work, my phone buzzed with an email from Silver, my lawyer. "Scarlett, I've filed a restraining order against your family members based on their attempts to claim ownership of your property." Also, I took the liberty of sending them formal documentation of your sole ownership, including payment records and contracts. They won't have a legal leg to stand on if they try anything. Best, Silver. I smiled, already feeling more secure. But I knew my family. Jade had always gotten what she wanted, one way or another, and my parents had spent years enabling her entitlement. They wouldn't give up easily. By noon, the security installation was complete, just as the caterers arrived to set up for the housewarming. My guest list was filled with colleagues, friends, and clients, people who had witnessed my years of effort, who knew exactly whose success they were celebrating. As I dressed for the evening, I caught my reflection in the massive bathroom mirror. I looked different, stronger. For years, I had maintained peace in the family by giving in to Jade's demands, by quietly accepting my parents' favoritism. But standing up for myself, protecting what was mine, it felt like stepping into the person I was always meant to be. At exactly 6:00 p.m., the doorbell rang, right on schedule. But when I opened the door, it wasn't my first guests. It was Jade. Tears streaked her face, cyan hovering uncertainly behind her. "Please," she sobbed, "you have to help me. Everyone's already been invited. I'll be humiliated if we have to change venues now. I'll let you be my maid of honor." I almost laughed, as if standing beside her at the altar was some grand honor I should be grateful for. "Jade," I said calmly, "you have 5 seconds to leave my property before the cameras record you trespassing again." 5. Her eyes widened. "But 4. Cyan tugged at her arm. "Babe, let's go. We'll figure something else out." 2. They scrambled back to their car just as my first real guests arrived. Violet stepped out, taking in the scene with an arched brow. "Was that Jade I just saw?" I shrugged. "Just another attempted theft." But this time, I was prepared. The party was everything I had dreamed of my home, filled with people who genuinely celebrated my success. As I gave house tours, I shared stories of the construction process, the design choices, the endless hours spent ensuring every detail was perfect. Around midnight, as the last guests were preparing to leave, Violet pulled me aside. "Your mom called me earlier," she said. "Tried to guilt me into talking sense into you. Said you were breaking up the family." I took a slow sip of champagne. "And what did you tell her?" "I told her that she and Jade broke up the family years ago by treating you like an ATM with legs. Then I blocked her number." I hugged her tightly. "This is my family now," I said. "The people who actually care about me." That night, after everyone had gone home, I walked through my villa alone. My heels echoed against the marble floors I had carefully chosen. My fingers traced the golden woodwork I had commissioned. The city lights stretched before me through the windows I had positioned just so. My phone buzzed one last time. An email from my father. "Your mother is devastated. Jade's wedding is in shambles. If you ever want to be part of this family again, you'll apologize and make this right." "Scarlett," I typed a reply. "I am part of a family, one that respects me, celebrates my success, and doesn't try to steal what I've earned. If you ever want to be part of that family, you'll need to apologize and make this right, but I won't hold my breath. Scarlett." I turned off my phone, poured myself one last glass of champagne, and walked out onto my terrace. The city sparkled below, and for the first time in years, I felt truly at home. This was my house, my success, my life, and no one could take that from me again. But something told me this wasn't over. Jade had never taken no for an answer, and my parents had never stopped enabling her. The question was, what would they try next? 3 days after my housewarming party, I received an unexpected visit at my office. "Violet," my assistant buzzed through. "Cyan, Jade's fiancé is here. He says it's urgent." I considered turning him away, but curiosity got the better of me. "Send him in." Cyan entered, looking uncomfortable in his expensive suit, probably another gift from my parents. He clutched a folder like a shield in front of him. "Scarlett, I know I'm the last person you want to see, but there's something you need to know," he said, placing the folder on my desk. "Jade's been lying to everyone, including me." I opened the folder and felt my blood run cold. Inside were bank statements, loan applications, and credit card bills, all showing massive debt. Jade had apparently been living far beyond her means, using my parents' names and credit to fund her lifestyle. She told me your parents were wealthy real estate developers, Cyan continued, his voice tight. Said this house was just one of many properties they owned. I had no idea it was yours, built with your own money. When I confronted her about it, let me guess, I interrupted. She threw a tantrum and blamed everyone else. He nodded. She's been pressuring me to sign a prenup that would give her full rights to any property we live in. Now I understand why. I leaned back in my chair, the pieces clicking into place. She wanted to marry you quickly, move into my house, and then make sure you couldn't claim it in a divorce. Just like she did with her first husband's beach house. There's more, Cyan said, pulling out his phone. She's been telling people she's the one who designed the villa, that she hired the contractors. She's even taking potential clients on tours, claiming she's starting a luxury real estate business. He showed me social media posts, dozens of them. Jade posing in my house, in my office, claiming my work as her own. The latest post made my Skoldenok turn. So excited to announce my new venture in luxury property development. First project, my dream villa designed and built by me. I'm sorry, Cyan said quietly. I've called off the engagement, but you should know she and your parents are planning something. I overheard them talking about proving family investment in the property. I pulled out my folder, the one containing every document, receipt, and contract related to the villa. Let them try. I've got 15 years of records showing exactly where every penny came from. After Cyan left, I called Silver immediately. Within an hour, he drafted cease and desist letters regarding Jade's false claims about the property. We need to move fast, he advised. If she's showing the house to potential clients, she could be committing fraud. That evening, as I drove home, an unusual number of cars lined my street. My brows furrowed as I approached my house, immediately noticing something was off. The lights were on lights I knew I hadn't left on. I pulled out my phone, checking the security camera feed, and there it was. Exactly what I had dreaded. Jade was hosting another unauthorized tour of my property, but this time, she had taken things to a new level. Through the cameras, I could hear her confident pitch to a group of well-dressed visitors. As you can see, this is the kind of luxury property my company specializes in. We're currently accepting investors for our next development project. I called the police. The scene that followed was equal parts satisfying and infuriating. Jade, dressed in what I immediately recognized as a cheap knockoff of my favorite business suit, trying to keep her composure as officers escorted her out. The potential investors standing awkwardly as they realized they'd been completely misled. And my parents, because of course, they had been waiting nearby, rushing in to defend her. She's just ambitious, my mother pleaded with the officers. She's trying to follow in her sister's footsteps. By committing fraud? I asked, stepping onto my own driveway. By breaking and entering? By scamming innocent people? My father's face turned red with anger as he whirled on me. This is your fault! If you had just given her the house like we asked, she wouldn't have had to resort to this. I stared at him in disbelief. Resort to this? She's been lying to everyone, racking up debt in your names, and now using my property to lure investors into a fake business. When are you going to stop enabling her? A police officer cleared his throat. Ma'am, would you like to press charges? I looked at Jade, mascara streaking down her face as she continued her frantic protests. At my parents, still trying to excuse her behavior, and at the scattered business cards littering my driveway, cards printed with her fake company name and my home address. Yes, I said firmly. Yes, I would. Jade's face contorted in rage. You wouldn't dare! I'm your sister! I met her gaze, calm and unwavering. No, you're a woman who tried to steal my home, my work, and my reputation. Being family doesn't give you the right to destroy what I've built. As the officers led her toward the patrol car, my mother made one last desperate attempt. Please, Scarlett, think about what this will do to our family name. I held her stare. I am thinking about it. I'm thinking about how you've let Jade tarnish it for years while I worked to build something real. I'm thinking about how you've chosen her lies over my truth every single time, and I'm thinking it's time for that to stop. Later that night, alone in my study, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I hesitated before answering. The voice on the other end was familiar. "Scarlett, it's Auburn, Jade's first husband." I tensed. "Auburn, why are you calling?" "I saw what happened on the local news. I should have warned you. She did the same thing to me, tried to claim my beach house as her investment property after the divorce. Your parents helped her then too." I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. I should have known. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because I wish someone had told me to stand my ground. Don't back down, Scarlett. Don't let them guilt you into dropping the charges. She needs to face consequences for once in her life." As I hung up, my phone buzzed with a text from Cyan. "Thank you for showing me the truth before it was too late." I walked through my quiet house, touching the walls I'd dreamed of for so long. Each room represented years of hard work, determination, and sacrifice. I wouldn't let anyone take that from me, not even family, especially not family. The next morning, my lawyer called with news that would change everything. The police investigation into Jade's fraudulent business activities had uncovered something much bigger than we expected. "Your sister hasn't just been impersonating you," Detective Morris said, spreading documents across my kitchen island. "She's been running a full-scale property investment scam using your reputation and credentials." I stared at the evidence before me, fake business cards with my license numbers, doctored photos of my previous development projects, and bank statements showing hundreds of thousands in investment deposits from unsuspecting victims. "How long?" I asked, my voice barely steady. "At least 8 months. She's been collecting down payments for luxury properties she claimed were upcoming projects, all using your professional history as credibility." My parents sat on the other side of the island, their faces ashen. They'd been called in for questioning, and the detective had insisted I be present. Now I understood why. "Mr. and Mrs. Barrett," Detective Morris continued, "your signatures appear on several of these investment documents. Care to explain?" My father's hands trembled as he adjusted his glasses. We thought we were helping her start a legitimate business." "She said Scarlett had agreed to mentor her." "By forging my credentials?" I interrupted. "By stealing my project portfolio?" "We didn't know!" my mother protested weakly. "She said you two had worked everything out after that little disagreement about the house." I laughed bitterly. "That little disagreement was her trying to steal my home, and you believed I'd just forgive and forget?" Detective Morris cleared his throat. "There's more, Miss Barrett. Scarlett, your sister has been using your Social Security number and business credentials to secure loans, significant loans." My heart stopped. "How much?" "Just over $2 million. The room spun. My mother burst into tears, but for once, I felt no sympathy. This wasn't just sibling rivalry or family drama anymore. This was calculated fraud that could destroy everything I'd worked for. "We can press charges," Detective Morris said gently. "Given the evidence, she's looking at serious prison time." "You can't," my mother wailed. "She's pregnant." The silence that followed was deafening. "What?" I finally managed. "She found out last week," my father said quietly. That's why we've been trying so hard to help her get established. She's going to be a single mother now that Cyan left." I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "So that makes it okay? She commits fraud, steals my identity, and potentially ruins my reputation. But it's all fine because she's pregnant? She's your sister?" my mother pleaded. "No," I said firmly. "She's a criminal who happens to share my DNA. And for once in her life, she's going to face consequences." I turned to Detective Morris. "I want to press all possible charges, and I want my parents investigated as potential accomplices." "Scarlett!" My father stood up, his face red. "You would send your own parents to jail?" "You signed fraudulent documents," I said calmly. "You helped her scam innocent people. If you're innocent, the investigation will prove it. If not, well, maybe it's time you face consequences too." After they left with Detective Morris, I sat alone in my kitchen, the magnitude of everything hitting me at once. My phone buzzed, a text from Violet, just heard. "You okay?" I stared at the message for a long moment before replying. "No." but I will be. The next morning, my lawyer, Silver, called with an update that made my blood run cold. The banks were freezing my business accounts pending investigation. It's temporary, he assured me. We have documentation proving the fraud, but Jade's actions have triggered EU Goldenatic fraud protocols. We need to act fast to protect your assets and reputation. I spent the next 3 days in endless meetings with banks, investigators, and my company's board. Jade's scam had been more sophisticated than anyone realized. She hadn't just stolen my identity. She'd created an entire fake business history intertwined with my real one. The good news, Silver said during our latest meeting, is that we can prove every legitimate project was yours. The bad news is, unraveling all this is going to take time. Time, the one thing I couldn't afford to lose. I had real projects in development, real clients counting on me. Then came the letter from my mother. Dearest Scarlett, Jade tried to end things last night. She's in the hospital now. The baby is fine, but the doctors say the stress is dangerous for both of them. Please, if you ever loved your sister, drop the charges. We can find another way. Mom. I read the letter 3 times before calling the hospital. As I suspected, there had been no suicide attempt, just another manipulation tactic. That evening, as I sat on my terrace watching the sunset, I made a decision. I'd spent my entire life trying to prove myself while Jade took shortcuts and blamed others for her failures. Not anymore. I called Detective Morris. I want to make a statement, I said firmly, about everything, and I want it on record. It was time to tell the whole truth, no matter who it hurt. 6 months later, I sat in the courtroom as the judge delivered Jade's sentence. 10 years for fraud, identity theft, and financial crimes. My parents, who had taken a plea deal for their role as accomplices, received probation and hefty fines. Jade didn't look at me once during the sentencing. Her baby bump was visible now, though the prison jumpsuit did its best to hide it. My mother's tears echoed through the courtroom, but they no longer moved me. I'd grown immune to their emotional manipulation. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited with cameras and microphones. Miss Barrett, how do you feel about your sister's sentence? I faced them with unwavering calm, my voice steady. This isn't about family drama. This is about fraud, theft, and accountability. My sister didn't just steal my identity. She stole from innocent people who trusted her with their investments. That trust was misplaced, and now justice has been served. The headlines the next morning were exactly what I expected. Real estate developer's sister sentenced in million-dollar fraud scheme. But what the papers didn't report was how the experience had changed me. My company didn't just survive, it thrived. The publicity from Jade's case brought attention to my legitimate projects, and clients appreciated my transparency throughout the ordeal. My reputation for integrity only grew stronger. The villa, my beautiful home that had started it all, became more than just a place to live. It became a symbol of resilience. I hosted charity events there, supporting organizations that helped victims of financial fraud. The irony wasn't lost on me. One evening, as I sat by the infinity pool watching the sun dip below the horizon, my phone rang. It was my father. Scarlett. His voice was hesitant, almost unfamiliar. Your mother and we've been doing a lot of thinking. The counseling from our probation program, it's opened our eyes. I didn't respond, letting him continue. We failed you, not just with Jade's crimes, but your whole life. We enabled her, dismissed your achievements, and never gave you the recognition you deserved. I know it's too late, but I'm sorry. I watched the sky shift into shades of pink and orange. You're right, Dad. It is too late for things to go back to how they were. But maybe we can build something new, something based on truth this time. I'd like that, he said quietly. After we hung up, I walked through my home, trailing my fingers along the walls I had fought so hard to protect. Every room held memories now, not just of the battle to keep it, but of the strength I had found in standing up for myself. Later that evening, Violet arrived with wine and takeout, our Friday tradition. She sank into the terrace sofa with a smirk. Heard about the sentencing. You okay? I smiled. A real smile. You know what? I am. For the first time in my life, I'm not carrying the weight of their expectations or guilt. I'm just me. To just you, she said, raising her glass. "The most badass property developer in the city." We laughed, and for the first time in years, I felt light. The next morning, an envelope arrived, Jade's prison letter. "Scarlett, I'm having a girl. The doctor says she'll be here in 2 months. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I'm getting help, real help. Maybe one day I'll understand why I did what I did. I won't ask you to be in her life. I haven't earned that, but I hope someday she grows up to be strong, like her aunt. Jade." I folded the letter and placed it in my desk drawer. Time would tell if Jade's change was real, but for now, I had a new luxury development to focus on. Life had taught me something invaluable sometimes. The family you're born into will try to tear you down, but that doesn't mean you can't rise stronger. My villa stood as proof of that truth, no longer just a home, but a testament to everything I had overcome. As I stepped into my office that morning, my eyes flickered to the framed newspaper front page from last year. "Local developer stands strong against family fraud." Below it, I had hung a small plaque with the words that had become my mantra: "Your success belongs to you. Never let anyone steal your light." The view from my office stretched across the city, full of possibilities. I had projects to develop, dreams to build, and a legacy to create, one that was truly mine. And this time, no one could take it from me. What do you do when the people who are supposed to support you try to take everything you've built? Do you surrender for the sake of family, or do you fight for what's rightfully yours? Scarlett spent years working tirelessly to create the life she wanted. She built her career, her reputation, and, most importantly, her dream home only for her family to decide it should belong to someone else. Her parents, who had always favored her sister, expected her to give it all away without a second thought. And Jade, entitled and spoiled, assumed she could manipulate Scarlett like she always had. But this time, Scarlett didn't back down. She had worked too hard, sacrificed too much to let them take what she had earned. With undeniable proof of her ownership and years of meticulous records, she shut down their scheme before it even started. And when they tried to guilt her, manipulate her, and send their flying monkeys to wear her down, she stood firm. Now, Scarlett is free. No more bending to their demands. No more playing the role of the less important daughter. No more family obligations that only benefited them. And while her parents and Jade were left scrambling, trying to recover from their own mistakes, Scarlett was thriving, hosting her housewarming party, surrounded by people who genuinely celebrated her success. So, what do you think? Was Scarlett right to cut them off, or should she have given in for the sake of family? Have you ever had to fight to protect what was yours? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.
As I pulled up to the curb and parked the car, a familiar sense of dread crept up my spine. It was the first day of school, and I knew I'd have to face my ex-husband Ethan and his new wife Cassidy at the drop-off line. I took a deep breath, turning to my husband, Dean, who gave me a reassuring squeeze on my hand. "You've got this, Lila. I'm right here with you," he said, his warm brown eyes locking onto mine. I nodded, steeling myself for the inevitable confrontation. Dean and I stepped out of the car, our kids, Mason and Harper, bounding ahead of us, excited for their first day back. "Mason, Harper, slow down, wait for us," I called out, hurrying to catch up. As we approached the school entrance, I saw them. Ethan, standing tall and imposing, Cassidy draped on his arm, her tight dress and heavy makeup drawing all the wrong kind of attention. Well, if it isn't the happy little family," Ethan sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. I felt Dean's hand on the small of my back, a silent reminder that I wasn't alone. "Ethan, Cassidy," I replied, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil raging inside me. Cassidy narrowed her eyes, her ruby-red lips curling into a smirk. "Lila, fancy seeing you here. I must say, you're looking a bit tired. I guess chasing after 2 kids can really take it out of a woman." I clenched my jaw, fighting the urge to lash out. Instead, I simply squeezed Dean's hand, drawing strength from his presence. "The kids are doing great, thanks for asking," Dean interjected, his tone light but firm. "Mason's been counting down the days until he could see his friends again." Ethan's gaze shifted to our son, a cruel glint in his eyes. Yes, I'm sure he has, though I wonder how long it'll be before he starts asking about his real father. Mason, oblivious to the tension, bounced on his heels, eager to join his classmates. Harper, sensing the hostility, pressed closer to me, her small hand gripping mine tightly. "Ethan, that's enough," I said, my voice low but unyielding. "The kids are off limits, and you know it." Ethan leaned in, his face mere inches from mine. "Oh, Lila, you know I'm not the one who's off limits here. Maybe if you'd been a better wife, I wouldn't have had to find other outlets." I felt the blood rush to my face, fury and humiliation burning through me. Before I could respond, Cassidy let out a shrill laugh, drawing the attention of the other parents. "Oh, Ethan, darling, you always did have a way with words." Poor Lila, still trying to cling to her dignity, even after all these years. The confrontation was spiraling, and I knew I had to get my kids away from this toxic mess. I took a step forward, putting myself between Ethan and our children. "That's enough. Come on, kids, let's get you to class." As I turned to leave, Ethan's voice rang out, laced with malice. "This isn't over, Lila, not by a long shot." I froze, the implication of his words sending a chill down my spine. Something told me this was just the beginning of a much bigger battle. The confrontation with Ethan and Cassidy played in my mind on a loop as I drove home from dropping the kids off at school. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles turning white, fury simmering just below the surface. How dare he? After everything he put me through, he still had the audacity to stand there and mock me in front of our children. The nerve of him, using our son as a pawn in his twisted games. I slammed my hand against the dashboard, the sharp pain grounding me. No, I wouldn't let him get to me. Not this time. I was done being the victim. As soon as I got home, I headed straight for my home office, booting up my computer with a sense of grim determination. If Ethan thought he could continue to undermine me, he had another thing coming. Fingers flying across the keyboard, I began digging, searching for any sign of his underhanded tactics. It didn't take long before I uncovered a disturbing pattern. Invoices, emails, and financial records that painted a clear picture of Ethan's relentless efforts to sabotage my career. "That bastard," I muttered under my breath, rage building with every new piece of evidence I uncovered. He had been systematically undermining my projects, spreading rumors about my competence, and even going so far as to interfere with potential clients and business partners, all in a calculated attempt to force me back into his orbit, to make me dependent on him once more. I leaned back in my chair, mind racing, as I tried to process the magnitude of his betrayal. After all these years, after the pain and heartbreak he had already caused, he was still consumed by his need to control me. "Lila, honey, what's wrong?" I looked up to see Dean standing in the doorway, his brow furrowed with concern. I'd been so lost in my own thoughts that I hadn't heard him come in. "It's Ethan," I said, my voice trembling with emotion. "He's been sabotaging my work, Dean, all this time. He's been trying to undermine me, to force me back to him." Dean's expression hardened, his jaw clenching as he absorbed the information. That son of a bitch. I knew he was trouble, but this... He moved closer, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. "What are you going to do?" I met his gaze, my resolve hardening. "I'm going to fight back. I'm not going to let him win. Not this time." Dean nodded, his eyes shining with pride. "I'm with you, Lila. Whatever you need, I'm here." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the world lift from my shoulders. With Dean by my side, I knew I could take on Ethan and win. "I'm going to need your help," I said, already formulating a plan in my mind. "I've got to start gathering more evidence, build a case against him, and I know just the person who can help." I reached for my phone, scrolling through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. Alex, an old friend and a brilliant lawyer, had always had my back. If anyone could help me take Ethan down, it would be him. As I pressed the call button, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was my chance to finally break free from Ethan's grasp, to reclaim my life, and build a future with the man I loved. Whatever it took, I was ready to fight. The call to Alex was a godsend. As soon as I explained the situation to him, he jumped into action, his legal expertise and sharp mind immediately honing in on the best course of action. "Leela, this is a serious case of harassment and financial sabotage," he said, his voice laced with concern. We're going to need to gather as much evidence as possible to build a strong case against Ethan. I nodded, feeling a weight lifted from my shoulders. I've already started digging, and the proof of his underhanded tactics is mounting. I can't believe he's been doing this all along. Alex let out a low whistle. Sounds like he's been playing the long game. Well, we're not going to let him get away with it. I'll start putting together a legal strategy, and I want you to keep gathering everything you can. We're going to take this bastard down. I felt a surge of gratitude and relief wash over me. Thank you, Alex. I don't know what I'd do without you. Hey, that's what friends are for, he replied, his tone reassuring. I've got your back, Lila. We're going to make sure Ethan pays for his crimes. As I hung up the phone, I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. With Alex on my side, I knew I had a fighting chance against Ethan's relentless schemes. But just as I was about to dive back into my research, my phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed Cassidy's number. I hesitated for a moment, unsure of whether to answer, but something in me compelled me to pick up. Hello? Lila, it's Cassidy. Her voice sounded strained, and I could hear the faint sound of crying in the background. Cassidy, what's wrong? I asked, my heart racing. It's Ethan, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I found something in his accounts, and I think he's been lying to me. I felt a surge of sympathy despite the history between us. What did you find? Cassidy took a shaky breath. Massive debts, suspicious transfers, and a lot of it seems to be tied to his business dealings with you. Lila, I think he's been using me to cover up his own financial troubles. I sat back in my chair, mind reeling. So Ethan had been keeping Cassidy in the dark about his true financial state. The realization that his new wife was unaware of his underhanded tactics only added to the complexity of the situation. Cassidy, I'm so sorry you're going through this, I said, my voice soft. But I want you to know that I had no idea about any of this. Ethan has been trying to sabotage me for years, and I've only just uncovered the extent of his schemes. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line, and then Cassidy spoke up again, her voice laced with a newfound determination. Lila, I want to help. If what you're saying is true, then I need to know the full extent of Ethan's deception. I can't be a part of this anymore. I felt a surge of surprise at her words, but I quickly recovered, recognizing the opportunity before me. Cassidy, I'd be grateful for your help. Let's work together to expose Ethan and put an end to his lies. As I hung up the phone, I couldn't help but feel a sense of cautious optimism. Perhaps Cassidy, an unlikely ally, could be the key to finally bringing Ethan down. With Alex's legal expertise and Cassidy's newfound cooperation, I finally felt like I had a fighting chance against Ethan's relentless scheming. Together, we began to meticulously piece together the evidence of his underhanded tactics, building a solid case that would expose his true nature. Okay, here's what we've got so far, Alex said, his brow furrowed in concentration as he reviewed the documents spread out on the conference table. Ethan has been systematically undermining your business dealings, sabotaging your contracts, and even going so far as to interfere with your client relationships. I nodded, my jaw set with determination. The proof is all there, Alex. He's been trying to force me back into a position of financial dependence on him. Cassidy, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke up, her voice laced with a mixture of anger and betrayal. I can't believe he's been doing this. All this time, I thought he was just a successful businessman. I had no idea the extent of his deception. Alex reached across the table, placing a reassuring hand on Cassidy's arm. I know this is a lot to take in, but we're going to make sure Ethan pays for his crimes. Lila, I think the best course of action is to start exposing his unethical practices to his business partners and stakeholders. I felt a surge of determination coursing through me. Let's do it. I'm ready to bring him down. Over the next few days, Alex and I worked tirelessly, compiling the evidence and crafting a strategic plan to methodically dismantle Ethan's carefully constructed facade. We reached out to his business partners, alerting them to his shady dealings, and leveraged Cassidy's inside knowledge to further strengthen our case. The ripple effects were immediate. Ethan's business ventures began to crumble as his partners and investors grew increasingly wary of his questionable practices. I watched with a sense of vindication as the man who had once held such power over me slowly started to lose his grip. But just when I thought we were making headway, Ethan struck back, launching a vicious attack on my company. I received a panicked call from one of my employees, informing me that a major client had abruptly pulled out of a lucrative contract, citing concerns about my leadership and the company's stability. "Damn it, Ethan," I muttered, slamming my fist against the desk. "He's not going to give up without a fight." Alex's eyes narrowed, his brow furrowing in concentration. This is exactly the kind of move I was expecting from him. But we're not going to let him win. We've got a solid case, and we're going to use it against him. Cassidy, who had been listening intently, leaned forward, her expression hardening. "I'm in. Whatever it takes to bring Ethan down, I'm with you." With a newfound sense of purpose, the three of us set out to execute our plan, determined to expose Ethan's deception and reclaim the power he had stolen from me. As we entered the conference room to confront Ethan's business partners, I felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through my veins. This was my chance to finally break free from his grasp, to reclaim my life and my future. "Gentlemen," I said, my voice unwavering, "we're here to discuss the unethical practices of Ethan Moore and how they've been affecting our business dealings." The room fell silent, and I knew that the battle had truly begun. The confrontation in the conference room was tense, the air thick with anticipation as Alex, Cassidy, and I laid out the damning evidence against Ethan. The businessmen sitting around the table shifted uncomfortably, their expressions shifting from disbelief to outrage as the scope of Ethan's unethical practices became clear. "This is outrageous," one of the partners, a well-respected businessman named Robert, exclaimed. "If what you're saying is true, Ethan has been systematically undermining our company's success for his own personal gain." I nodded, my gaze unwavering. "The proof is all there. Ethan has been sabotaging our contracts, interfering with our client relationships, and even funneling funds from our projects into his own personal accounts." Cassidy, her eyes blazing with a righteous fury, spoke up. "I had no idea the extent of his deception. I believed he was a successful and honest businessman. But it turns out he's been using me to cover up his own financial troubles." The other partners exchanged uneasy glances, the gravity of the situation sinking in. Alex leaned forward, his voice steady and authoritative. "Gentlemen, we're here to ask that you sever all ties with Ethan Moore and his businesses. If you continue to work with him, you'll be complicit in his unethical practices and will be forced to take legal action." The room erupted into a flurry of heated discussions, the partners debating the implications of cutting Ethan loose. I watched, my heart pounding, as the tide slowly began to turn against my ex-husband. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Robert stood up, his expression grim. "After careful consideration, we've decided to terminate all of our business relationships with Ethan Moore. His actions are unacceptable, and we will not be associated with such blatant disregard for ethical conduct." A collective sigh of relief passed through the room, and I felt a surge of triumph coursing through my veins. We had won the first round, and Ethan's carefully constructed empire was starting to crumble. As we left the conference room, Alex placed a hand on my shoulder, a proud smile on his face. "Nicely done, Lila. I knew you had it in you to take this bastard down." I returned the smile, feeling a weight lifted from my shoulders. None of this would have been possible without you and Cassidy. Thank you, both of you, for standing by me. Cassidy stepped forward, her expression resolute. "Lila, I may have been Ethan's wife, but I refuse to be complicit in his lies and manipulation. He's going to pay for what he's done, to you and to me." I reached out and squeezed her hand, a newfound respect blossoming between us. Together, we're going to make sure he does. In the days that followed, the news of Ethan's unethical practices spread like wildfire through the business community. One by one, his partnerships and contracts began to unravel, the damage to his reputation irreparable. And as I watched Ethan's world crumble around him, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. This was no longer just about my own redemption. It was about reclaiming the power he had stolen from me, and ensuring that he could never again use his position to hurt me or my family. With each new victory, I felt a surge of resilience and determination. Ethan had once been the one in control, but now the tables had turned. I was the one calling the shots. and I wasn't going to stop until he was completely and utterly defeated. As news of Ethan's unethical practices continued to spread, his world began to unravel at an alarming pace. One by one, his business partnerships and lucrative contracts slipped through his fingers, the damage to his reputation proving to be irreparable. I watched with a mix of satisfaction and trepidation as the tables turned, knowing that Ethan's desperation would only continue to grow. And true to form, he soon made his move, launching a bold attack against my own company. It started with a series of anonymous calls to my clients, casting doubt on my leadership and the stability of my business. Rumors swirled, and I could feel the pressure mounting as several key accounts began to waver in their support. "Damn it, Ethan," I muttered under my breath, my hands clenching into fists. "He's not going down without a fight." I immediately called Alex, our strategy session intense and focused, as we worked to counter Ethan's latest maneuver. "This is exactly the kind of underhanded tactic I was expecting from him," Alex said, his brow furrowed in concentration. "But we're not going to let him win. We've got the evidence, and we're going to use it to our advantage." With renewed determination, we sprang into action, reaching out to our clients and partners, providing them with the irrefutable proof of Ethan's misdeeds. It was a delicate dance, reassuring them while also demonstrating our unwavering commitment to integrity and transparency. And just when it seemed like we were starting to gain the upper hand, Ethan struck again, this time with a direct confrontation. I was in my office, reviewing the latest financial reports, when my assistant knocked on the door, her expression tense. "Lila, Ethan Moore is here to see you. He's demanding to speak with you immediately." I felt a chill run down my spine, but I steeled my nerves, knowing that I couldn't back down. "Send him in," I said, my voice steady. Ethan burst through the door, his eyes wild and his usually composed demeanor shattered. "Lila, what the hell have you done?" he snarled, slamming his fist on my desk. I remained calm, meeting his gaze with unwavering determination. "I've done what I needed to do to protect myself and my family from your manipulative schemes, Ethan. You brought this upon yourself." He let out a bitter laugh, his expression twisting into a sneer. "Protect yourself? Ha! You're nothing without me, Lila. This company, this life, it's all because of me, and now you're trying to destroy everything I've built." I felt a surge of anger, but I refused to let it show. "No, Ethan. This company, this life, it's mine. You may have helped me get started, but I built this with my own 2 hands, and I'm not going to let you take it away from me again." Ethan's face contorted with rage, and for a moment I thought he might lash out physically. But just then, the door burst open, and Cassidy strode in, her expression a mix of fury and determination. "Eth over," she said, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "I know about your financial troubles, your shady business dealings. You're finished." Ethan's eyes went wide, and he seemed to shrink before our very eyes. In that moment, I knew that the tide had finally turned. Ethan's reign of control was coming to an end, and I was going to emerge victorious. As Ethan stood before me, his carefully constructed facade crumbling, I felt a sense of vindication wash over me. All the years of pain, the manipulation, and the constant fear of losing everything, it had all led to this moment. Cassidy's revelation, coupled with the mounting evidence of Ethan's unethical practices, had dealt a devastating blow to his already precarious position. The man who had once wielded such power over me was now reduced to a desperate, cornered animal, his world rapidly unraveling around him. "Ethan, it's over," I said, my voice steady and unwavering. "You've lost." He stared at me, his eyes wild with a mix of fury and desperation. "Lost? No, this isn't over, Lila. You can't do this to me. I won't let you." Cassidy stepped forward, her expression unyielding. "Yes, Ethan, it is over. I've seen the evidence of your lies and your financial troubles. You're finished." Ethan's gaze darted between Cassidy and me, his usually composed demeanor shattered. "You bitch!" he spat, his voice dripping with venom. "You're both going to pay for this." I felt a surge of pity, despite the hatred I felt towards him. "Ethan, threatening us isn't going to change anything. It's time for you to face the consequences of your actions." He let out a hollow laugh, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "Consequences? You have no idea what I'm capable of, Lila. I'll destroy you. I'll destroy everything you've built." I knew that Ethan was at his most dangerous when he was cornered, but I refused to be intimidated. Go ahead and try, Ethan, but this time I'm not going to back down. I'm done being your victim. Ethan's expression darkened, and for a moment I thought he might lash out, but then something seemed to shift in him and his shoulders sagged in resignation. Fine, he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. What do you want? I felt a sense of triumph, but I refused to gloat. I want you to leave us alone, Ethan. I want you to stop interfering in my life and my family's life, and I want you to make amends for the damage you've caused. Ethan's eyes narrowed, and I could see the wheels turning in his mind. Amends? What do you mean? I mean, you're going to make a full confession, Ethan, I said, my voice hardening. You're going to publicly acknowledge your unethical practices, and you're going to make restitution to the people and companies you've hurt. Ethan's face contorted with rage, but he remained silent, his jaw clenched. And if you don't, I continued, I'll make sure that you pay the full price for your crimes. You won't just lose your business and your reputation. You'll lose everything. The room was thick with tension as Ethan considered my ultimatum. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he let out a defeated sigh. Fine, he muttered, his voice laced with resignation. I'll do it. As Ethan turned to leave, Cassidy stepped forward, her expression hardening. And Ethan, this is the last time you'll ever see me. I'm done with your lies and your manipulation. Our marriage is over. Ethan's eyes widened, and for a moment he looked almost vulnerable. But then he turned and walked out of the room, his shoulders slumped in defeat. I watched him go, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. It was over. Ethan's reign of terror was finally at an end. And this time, I knew that I had the strength and the support to move on, to build a new life free from his shadow. As I looked around the room, surrounded by the smiling faces of my family and friends, a sense of overwhelming relief and gratitude washed over me. It was Mason's 7th birthday, and despite the tumultuous events of the past few weeks, we were finally able to celebrate in peace and happiness. Dean stood by my side, his arm wrapped firmly around my waist, his gaze filled with love and pride. After all the battles we had endured, he had never wavered in his support, his unwavering belief in me a constant source of strength. You did it, Lila, he whispered, pulling me close. You finally broke free from Ethan's grasp. I'm so proud of you. I leaned into his embrace, feeling the tension in my shoulders melt away. I couldn't have done it without you, Dean. You and Alex and Cassidy, you all stood by me, even when the odds seemed stacked against us. Dean chuckled softly, his eyes crinkling at the corners. That's what family is for, Lila. We stick together, no matter what. A sudden burst of laughter drew our attention to the other side of the room, where Mason and Harper were gathered with their friends, their faces aglow with joy and excitement. Watching them, carefree and happy, filled me with a sense of profound gratitude and relief. They deserve this, Lila, Dean murmured, his gaze fixed on our children. They deserve to grow up in a home filled with love and laughter, without the shadow of Ethan's darkness looming over us. I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. You're right, and thanks to you and to everyone who stood by us, that's exactly what they're going to have. As the party wore on, I found myself drifting from one group to another, basking in the warmth and support of the loved ones who had rallied around me. Friends from work, neighbors, and even Cassidy, they all offered their congratulations and well wishes, their genuine smiles, a testament to the community that had stood by me during my darkest hours. Lila, I just wanted to say how proud I am of you, Cassidy said, her voice softened by a newfound humility, and to thank you for everything you've done to help me see the truth about Ethan. I felt a surge of empathy, reaching out to give her hand a gentle squeeze. Cassidy, you don't have to thank me. You're the one who found the courage to walk away from him. That's not an easy thing to do. She nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I know, but I couldn't have done it without your support. You've shown me that there's a life beyond Ethan's shadow, and I'm determined to build that for myself. I smiled, feeling a newfound respect for the woman who had once been my adversary. You're going to be just fine, Cassidy, and if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here. As the party wound down and the last of our guests departed, I found myself alone with Dean and the kids, basking in the warm glow of the living room fireplace. Mason and Harper were curled up on the couch, their eyes heavy with sleep, and Dean pulled me close, pressing a gentle kiss to my forehead. "It's over, Lila," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You can finally breathe again." I nodded, my own eyes brimming with tears of relief and joy. "Yes, Dean, it's over, and now we can focus on building the life we deserve, together." As I watched my family, safe and content in our home, I knew that the battle had been worth it. Ethan's reign of terror was finally at an end, and I had emerged stronger, more resilient, and more determined than ever to forge a future filled with love, happiness, and the unwavering support of those who truly mattered. "Mrs. Hendricks?" I turned towards the unexpected voice interrupting our family dinner to see a sharply dressed man at the doorway. "I'm Kenneth Briggs, a private investigator." He stepped inside, ignoring Derek's questioning look. "I have some sensitive information regarding your husband." My heart raced as Briggs withdrew a manila envelope. "Mrs. Hendricks, I regret to inform you that your husband has been involved in an affair for the past 8 months. The room fell silent as Derek's fork clattered onto his plate. I felt the blood drain from my face as Briggs removed a sheaf of photographs, each one a nauseating gut punch. There was Derek, locked in intimate embraces with a slender brunette whose face I instantly recognized, my estranged younger sister, Elise. "You lying, cheating bastard!" I erupted, shattering the stillness. Bile rose in my throat as I hurled the photos across the table, uncaring that our teenage daughters flinched at the venom in my voice. Derek's complexion turned ashen. "Marla, I can explain." "Like hell you can." I cut him off with a sweep of my hand, chest heaving with anger and betrayal. "How could you do this to me, to our family?" I gestured at our girls, faces contorted with shock and confusion. "Mrs. Hendricks," Briggs spoke evenly, "I have documented evidence of your husband systematically draining finances and diverting assets to fund his indiscretions with your sister over the past several months." The despair sliced through me, sharp as a knife. I had suspected Derek's distance, the constant business trips and late nights, but Elise? My own flesh and blood? My temple throbbed as waves of rage threatened to drown me. "I'm leaving for Shanghai tonight on an urgent business trip," Derek abruptly announced, rising from his chair. Defiance flashed across his taut features. "When I return, we'll discuss this rationally like adults." "Don't bother coming back," I shouted after his retreating figure. I whirled towards Elise's damning photos, still strewn across the tablescape amidst our half-eaten dinner. My life as I knew it lay in ruins, but I would not surrender so easily. Mustering every ounce of composure, I turned to face my bewildered daughters. "This changes nothing for you two," I stated, my voice fortified with a conviction I didn't quite feel. "Your father and I?" I stumbled over the words, tasting ashes on my tongue. "We're going through a difficult time, but I promise you we'll get through this." Their frightened expressions twisted the knife deeper into my heart. I watched numbly as they fled the maelstrom of shattered trust and heartbreak, now consuming the home I'd thought was unshakable. Briggs remained an uncomfortable witness. "My services have been paid in full to provide you with all available documentation," he remarked, sliding the envelope towards me. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Hendricks. No wife deserves this." An icy calm insulated me as I accepted the file. "Don't be sorry, Mr. Briggs." My voice hardened with grim resolution. "Be ready, because I'm just getting started." The hours blurred together after Derek's abrupt departure. I paced the hallways of our home, a gilded cage now tainted by his deception. Framed photos mocked me at every turn, snapshots of happier times twisted into bitter lies. I sank onto the bed we once shared, cradling my throbbing head. How could the man I loved, the father of my children, betray me so callously? And with Elise, of all people, my own sister? Trembling fingers traced the sharp lines of Derek's deceit, immortalized in Briggs' damning photos. An animalistic rage seethed within me, screaming for vengeance. I envisioned hurling plates, diamonds, bricks, anything to shatter the man who had shattered my world, without a shred of remorse. But I couldn't lash out recklessly, not with custody of the girls at stake. I had to remain level-headed, strategic. Derek's smug assertion that we'd discuss this rationally still rankled, as if he could whitewash his transgressions with empty platitudes. No, I needed a plan, a way to strike back and regain control, to ensure he and Elise faced the consequences they deserved. The echo of the front door slamming ricocheted through the stillness, jarring me from my stupor. I tensed, but familiar footsteps ascended the staircase. "Hey!" Theo's concerned face appeared in the doorway. Of course, he had rushed over after hearing the news. My dear friend and the best divorce attorney in the state. Wordlessly, I handed him the file, watching his expression contort with disbelief and anger as he examined the indisputable proof. "That lying sack of shit," he growled at last, raking calloused fingers through his graying hair. "Don't mince words, Theo," I replied with a hollow laugh. "Just tell me honestly, what are my options?" His jaw tightened grimly. "We build an ironclad case. Hit him where it hurts, his money, his assets, his reputation. With evidence like this," he waved the folder in emphasis, "we bury the bastard." A vindictive thrill coursed through me at the thought of skinning Derek for every last penny, to leave him destitute and disgraced as penance for his crimes. "Good," I stated, steeling my voice, "because I want it all. Every sordid detail, every illicit transfer of marital assets exposed. He doesn't get to slink away unscathed." Theo's expression shifted to one of cautious concern. "Marla, think this through. Once we expose him, there's no going back. Your marriage, your lives together. It'll all be destroyed, played out in open court for everyone to dissect. Can you live with that?" I felt my expression harden into a rictus carved from ice. "Theo, he destroyed my life the moment he betrayed me with my own sister," I replied with frigid clarity. "Now I'm going to destroy his." Those final words unleashed a twisted sense of dark satisfaction. For too long, I had been the victim, the deceived wife, the embarrassed sister, the fool, but no longer. If Derek and Elise wanted the gloves off, I would oblige them. Starting today, I was going on the attack. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of grim determination. On Theo's advice, I began methodically collecting evidence to solidify my case against Derek and Elise. When the private investigator's report confirmed my worst fears that Derek had been systemically siphoning money and assets to fund his tawdry affair, a cold fury insulated me. I felt icy detachment transcend the devastating anguish of his betrayal. First, I discreetly transferred the contents of our joint accounts to a new one under my name alone, ensuring Derek would be unable to drain our finances further. The numbers swam before my eyes, each pilfered figure another twist of the knife in my gut. Next came compiling the paperwork. Copies of bank statements, unexplained expenditures, mortgage transfers, all blatantly suspicious. Theo assured me we had more than enough to decimate Derek's falsely cultivated facade of martial bliss and business success. "We also need to figure out your living situation," he advised during one late-night strategy session, the shadows accentuating his frown lines. "If you stay in the house, it just gives Derek's lawyers more ammunition to claim you condoned his actions." I worried my bottom lip, reluctant to uproot our daughters' lives any more than necessary. But Theo made a fair point. Any delay could jeopardize my custody claim. Surprising even myself, I found the answer immediately. "My friend Lena? She has that big place in Hudson after her divorce." Theo's eyebrows arched in approval. "The financial advisor who hates cheaters? Perfect. She'll make an amazing ally and witness." Sure enough, one phone call was all it took for Lena to open her doors without question. "What day do you need me, hon?" Her smoky voice crackled over the line, full of the vinegar and vulnerability that characterized survivors like us. Within 36 hours, I had packed up what little I could carry of our old life and ushered the girls into Lena's guest rooms. To their shell-shocked whispers about this only being temporary, I forced a reassuring smile that was only partially a lie. "Chin up, ladies," Lena commanded, wrapping us in her signature embrace, rich curls cascading around her warm features. "We've got your backs. Count on that." As we hunkered in the cocoon of Lena's hospitality, I felt the first flickers of hope reigniting inside me, that Derek and Elise's transgressions wouldn't go unavenged, and that a path forward still remained. Then the phone rang, shattering the moment's fragile complacency. Derek's number flashed across the screen, and an icy chill gripped me. The first volley was about to be fired. I stared at Derek's number flashing insistently on the screen. A twisted part of me longed to answer, to confront him with the full depth of his betrayal. But I knew better than to show my hand prematurely. "Lena," I called out, "can you join me?" Within moments, her concerned features appeared in the hallway. Is everything okay? Wordlessly, I tilted the phone towards her. Understanding flickered across her expression as Derek's number buzzed again. Want me to take this? I nodded gratefully. Lena was ex-military, unflappable and strategic, the perfect shield against Derek's manipulation. She accepted the call, angling the mouthpiece away. Derek, her tone was clipped but composed. Marla's indisposed at the moment. There was a muffled torrent from the other end. I saw Lena's jaw tighten imperceptibly. I'm sure she'll reach out when she's ready to discuss things rationally. Appointed Barb. For now, it's best you give her some space to process recent developments. Another eruption of protests, this one raising Lena's sculptured brows. I didn't realize rehashing sensitive family matters was appropriate workplace conversation, she rejoined coolly. But I'll pass along your thoughts to Marla. Goodbye, Derek. She disconnected the call with a succinct tab. Sorry about that, Han. I know that couldn't have been easy listening to his nonsense. A tremulous exhale escaped me. You're amazing, Lena, truly. She waved a dismissive hand. Please, that blowhard doesn't rattle me. Her warm eyes creased with concern. But you look like you're carrying the weight of the world right now. What else can I do? I felt a renewed surge of purpose. Actually, there is one thing. An hour later, we were closeted in Lena's luxurious home office, poring over the meticulously assembled dossier that would become the armament for my legal battle. Lena shook her head slowly as she absorbed the bank statements, check stubs, and appalling money trail. This is embezzlement, plain and simple. He bled you dry to keep that little harlot satisfied. My voice was toneless. The sad part? He thought I'd never find out, that I was too busy or too oblivious to ever piece it all together. Her sculpted features contorted with disgust. What a delusional, selfish prick. Well, the delusion ends now. I clicked over to the shared portfolio, watching the figures populate. These are all the holdings and assets Derek can legally access. Understanding flickered in Lena's obsidian eyes. And you want to lock him out? I nodded curtly. Every last dime gets retitled under my sole name, investments, real estate, liquid securities. He doesn't get to touch a penny of what's rightfully mine until the courts decide otherwise. Lena's dexterous fingers danced across the keyboard, initiating transfers and updated credentials. Consider it done. That money-grubbing liar is officially cut off. Her expression shifted as she decrypted another subfolder. Marla, what are these numbered accounts in the Caymans? I felt my cheeks flush as fragments of hushed conversation suddenly clicked into place. You're telling me that arrogant bastard was hoarding money offshore this entire time? She let out a slow whistle. And not just chump change, either. Her deft strokes isolated each account, each one more grossly embellished than the last. He could have been diligently saving for our future, our retirement. The bitterness was acid on my tongue. Instead, he pulled an economic 9/11 on us to secure his little hideaway nest with a lease. Lena's elfish features contorted with revulsion. Well, this is step too far. He can't just go burying assets and flaunting the law like that. I realize that now. My hands curled into fists as the magnitude of his duplicity hit me in waves. That duplicitous son of a bitch. Lena reached over and squeezed my arm, her touch steadying. Hey, we'll nail him for this, I swear. He's not getting away with pillaging your hard-earned nest egg. Jaw tightened with resolution. I held her gaze levelly. You're damn right, he won't. Not on my watch. The next few weeks became an intricate choreography of shielding myself from Derek's manipulations and shoring up my defenses. Thanks to Lena's Herculean efforts, all our major assets had been retroactively retitled under my singular ownership, staunching the financial hemorrhaging. Not that Derek didn't try to regain control. His calls and texts blew up my phone in increasingly erratic increments, peppering his demands with hollow protestations of innocence and misguided love. Marla, I know you're upset, but can't we talk this through like rational adults? I'm still your husband, and I demand. Towards the end, even the girls noticed, flinching at the shrill tones distorting from the speakers. I forestalled their concerned questions with reassuring smiles and stated that their father just needed some time. In reality, I had both dreaded and anticipated this escalation in Derek's behavior. So I followed Theo's counsel in documenting every irate voicemail, every unhinged text diatribe. More damning proof for the legal battleground that loomed ahead. To mute my inner turmoil, I receded inwards, letting a fortifying detachment insulate me. I no longer dwelled on the gutting anguish of his betrayal, nor the gaping void his calloused disregard had eviscerated. Instead, I simply existed. Day to day, checking the obligatory boxes with the armor of detachment, deflecting the numbing currents of fury, regret, and occasional pity that taunted me. Theo assured me this emotional icebox was normal, even advisable. Feeling is the enemy right now, Marla. It'll just cloud your judgment and give Derek's shysters an opening. Nevertheless, the customary rituals of my old life still haunted me like ghostly sentinels, mocking the hollowness of my existence. I found myself jolting awake in panic at 3 a.m., bitter at the loss of the partner who had once slumbered beside me, reassuring and sheltering. Who had that man been? The one I committed 20-something years to? Or had he died long ago, subsumed by the sociopsychic monster who now reviled me? Desperate for an outlet, I immersed myself in maintaining the vestiges of normalcy for the girls, ensuring their schedules and activities persisted with minimal disruption. Blessing Lena's hospitality for providing a cocoon of security, however fleeting it might prove. Still, their troubled frowns whenever Derek's name arose spoke volumes. How much longer could I reasonably postpone revealing the truth? That the father figure they had idolized was well on his way to becoming a pariah? That our family nucleus was splintering beyond repair? They were sharp, precocious young ladies. They would eventually discern that the ensuing divorce was no amicable separation. I found myself craving other distractions, any diversion to divert my mind from its ceaseless spools of recrimination and dismay. With Lena's encouragement, I gingerly resumed my passion projects like painting and weaving, channeling my pent-up tempests into intricate line work and fractal textures. I joined her twice-weekly boxing sessions at an exclusive boutique gym, relishing the euphoric simplicity of repeatedly pummeling the heavy bag in controlled bursts of exertion. My therapist, Dr. Ramirez, applauded these efforts towards self-reclamation during our bi-weekly visits. A serene, maternal presence, she nonetheless stressed the necessity of working through the grieving process. You're building impressive fortifications, Marla, but you can't wall off the pain indefinitely. It will find cracks, erode your defenses. Let yourself experience the waves of hurt, then release them with intentional healing. It's the only way to fully excise the toxins he inflicted. Even the good doctor's empathetic counsel sparked flickering prickles of resentment. Hadn't I endured enough psychological carnage already? Why should I purposefully immiserate myself by treading through the minefield of what was and what could have been? 10 agonizing days after his abrupt departure, Derek finally returned from his supposed business trip. I braced myself, squaring my shoulders as Theo and I waited in Lena's vestibule. The familiar crunch of tires on gravel heralded his arrival. I gripped the thick dossier tighter, its damning contents fortifying my resolve. The front door burst open and Derek blustered inside, withering slightly at the sight of Theo. "Why am I not surprised you're here?" he sneered. "This is the part where you start listening for once in your miserable life," Theo stated flatly. Derek opened his mouth, no doubt to spew more indignant dismissals, but I cut him off. No more lies. My voice was glacial. No more deceptions, delusions, or pitiful attempts to gaslight me. With surgical precision, I unfurled the gallery of photos, spreadsheets, and documentation across the sofa. Derek's complexion ashen as the incriminating evidence of his malfeasance proliferated. "Not only have you been serially unfaithful," I heard my tone acquire a razor's edge, "but you've been slowly looting our accounts, pillaging our assets to fund your sad little tryst with my sister." His Adam's apple bobbed rapidly as panic crept into his expression. "Marla, I can explain ever. Save your rationalizations. They're meaningless at this point." I shoved aside his grasping hands, the paper seeming to sear his fingertips. "Your signature is on every bank draft, every wire transfer, every unauthorized disbursement of funds, plain as day." Derek's facade finally cracked, ugliness twisting his features. "So that's it, then? A few indiscretions, and you're burning everything to the ground? Our marriage, my career, our family legacy?" "Your indiscretions have already detonated our family," I exploded, infusing every ounce of scorn and disgust into the words. "I don't recognize the pathetic bastard standing before me anymore. "You self-righteous bitch," he erupted with a sudden primal fury that made Theo tense instinctively. "You think you can publicly flog me like some criminal without consequences?" My answering smile was as frigid as Antarctic ice. "I relish those consequences, Derek, because in the end, you'll be broke, alone, and utterly disgraced. A shunned, soiled nothing, while I walk away from the ashes." Chin jutting in a final petulant display of contempt, he turned on his heel and stormed out. But even his exaggerated bluster couldn't disguise the dawning horror on his face. He knew he was cornered, outmaneuvered. Checkmate. That night, even my dreams offered no sanctuary. I found myself crying hot, angry tears, not from sorrow, but from a place of visceral rage that this utter waste of a man had dared to betray me so profoundly, to squander every ounce of goodwill, trust, and commitment I'd so foolishly vested in him. But the tears were also cathartic, lancing years of pent-up disillusionment and deception. As the howling echoes of Derek's classically juvenile tantrums faded, a steely resolve cemented within me. No more would I be the victim, the pretty little ornament masking the rot festering beneath. From this point forward, I would be the vengeful architect of his self-destruction, and every psychological dagger, every precisely calibrated legal maneuver would serve as the instruments of that exquisite retribution. I would burn it all down and salt the earth, just like he deserved. In the days following Derek's meltdown, I wasted no time capitalizing on the initiative. Utilizing my collated evidence, I filed for an at-fault divorce on grounds of adultery, abandonment, and the unauthorized dissipation of marital assets. While part of me recoiled at the prospect of airing our imploded marriage's dirty laundry in open court, another part recognized the strategic value. By striking first with an overwhelming offense, I seized control of the narrative while blindsiding Derek. "He'll be scrambling to build a defense on multiple fronts," Theo assured me, typically unflappable demeanor, betraying a hint of dark satisfaction. "Let's see him lawyer up to counter all these interlocking claims." True to form, Derek soon found himself engulfed under an avalanche of damaging disclosures. The paternity allegations alone were enough to decimate what remained of his professional reputation. Coupled with the fraud in asset disclosures, they cemented his status as a radioactive pariah. By leveraging my carefully assembled documentation and testimony, my legal team constructed an inescapable cage of consequences. Surveillance evidence placed him at hotels and rendezvous spots, often withdrawing substantial cash amounts just beforehand. Banking records revealed his establishment of slush fund accounts and wire transfers to international holding locations. Even more damaging were the third-party testimonies of Elise's indiscriminate confessions to family members, of Derek's increasingly callous behavior towards me and the girls, and the contradictory paper trails he left behind while cavorting with his mistress. Within weeks, the court of public opinion had sentenced Derek as guilty. Long before our divorce could be formalized or the civil trials concluded, the man was an utter professional and personal pariah. "You did this," he raged during one ill-advised confrontation. "My colleagues won't even speak to me anymore." I merely shrugged. "I'm simply disclosing facts and letting people draw their own conclusions, Derek. If they're judging you harshly, perhaps that's indicative of your actions." The expression contorting his face oscillated between apoplectic rage and sheer panic. It was abundantly clear he had never contemplated the full-scale mutually assured destruction I was orchestrating. That his ego had blinded him to the very real prospect of a life in ashes. Watching his mounting desperation furnished a deeply vindicating gratification. My emotional resurrection seemed to flourish in inverse proportion to his self-inflicted ruination. I found myself giving media interviews with selective, surgically precise responses. Posed photos were art directed to present me as the quintessential wounded but resilient heroine, steadfastly soldiering forward for her innocent children. Conversely, every interaction and court appearance saw Derek further unraveling into an erratic, sullen caricature of the urbane success he once feigned. It became undeniable that his simmering, thwarted indignation constituted the final death rattle of ego before total annihilation. For any residual pity I might have felt for the man rapidly dissipated. In its place blossomed an almost rapturous sense of karmic inevitability. This was always his destiny, to be outwitted and outmaneuvered by the woman he so casually discarded in pursuit of instant gratification. Not that I would brandish the bloody coup as some Amazon's war prize, but by maintaining an outward veneer of gracious composure, I let the debris of Derek's immolation serve as its own cautionary testament. Fool me once, shame on you, but to self-destruct so thoroughly despite every opportunity for redemption? Well, that unmitigated failure of character was his alone, inscribed across the ashes of his legacy. Despite the protracted legal battles, the divorce itself was a mere formality at this point. Derek's derelictions were so overwhelming, so undeniably malicious, that the proceedings proved utterly one-sided. The court awards sole custody to Mrs. Hendricks in addition to a substantial majority of liquid assets and properties, the judge stated in clipped, dispassionate tones. Mr. Hendricks' conduct represents a complete abrogation of his familial duties and marital vows. Across the aisle, Derek slumped in his seat, a pathetic, broken husk animating what remained of his publicly immolated reputation. Gone were the immaculate suits and assured airs. He sat there, hollowed and ashen in discarded clothes, reeking of whiskey and sleepless nights. His eyes remained downcast, unable to meet my unflinching gaze. As the gavel declared the marriage officially dissolved, I felt an unfamiliar pang reverberate through me. Not sorrow or regret, those indulgences were distant memories. No, this was the exhilarating release of a burden, shackles tough to the soul being struck off with a stark finality. Theo clasped my shoulder, his calloused grip anchoring me back to the moment. "It's done," he murmured with a barely perceptible nod. "He got everything he deserved." My smile was equally understated yet serene. No, he got far less than that. In the hellish months that followed, Derek's descent charted a tragicomic freefall. Once an upwardly mobile banking executive, his professional pedigree mutated into permanent radioactive toxicity. Every job opportunity disintegrated as cagey references shared the cautionary chronicle of his philandering, misogyny, and white-collar embezzlement. Even his closest business associates distanced themselves, justifiably wary of being tainted by association with such a comprehensive implosion. From that inferno emerged my total legal and moral vindication. But more importantly, it heralded an emancipation from the shattered dreams and profound delusions that had anchored me to that wretched man for so long. The assets I had wrenched from Derek's grasp furnished me a revitalizing new lease on life. Within 6 months, I had liquidated our marital residence and invested in a sleek, elevated townhome in a more vibrant, re-energized area of the city, closer to the girls' schools and extracurriculars. No longer shrouded in spatial mementos of trauma and despair, I found myself blossoming back into my truest self. Career opportunities that had stagnated during my marriage rekindled with fresh fire. Artist collectives and nonprofits welcomed my talents with open arms. Even the girls seemed to thrive in this regenerative environment. The pinched, haunted wariness that had clouded their expressions steadily lifted. Recitals, matches, and events no longer triggered bristled silences where Derek's absence loomed like an unexploded mortar. We were free. Wandering the farmers' markets and cultural festivals that epitomized our new neighborhood's beating heart, I could almost physically feel their tension eroding beneath the purifying sunshine of autonomy. Almost cruelly, I ensured Elise received no such comforts. My lawsuits alleging her complicity in the depletion of marital assets continued unabated. Just as the courts had scoured Derek of every ill-gotten gain, so too would she face devastating financial repercussions. Petty recompense, some might argue. But such was the emotional ruinscape she had indulged in seeding that I felt no mercy. In fact, I made it a point to routinely update her on her dwindling legal circumstances, now that pride and perjury charges were being considered. Let her endure even a fraction of the torment she helped inflict, watching her greed and wanton selfishness facilitate her own undoing. Some called it overkill. I called it karma, finally delivered. The only pity I retained was for my former self, the myopic, naively devoted woman who had anchored her identity to a depraved lie and a despicable con man. The hard-learned lessons had flayed that identity until only truth remained. Perhaps that was the true path to healing, embracing these harsh revelations as brusque awakenings rather than debilitating traumas. To finally see the withered, desiccated remnants exposed, while turning my gaze to the vibrant sunlight and new horizons untainted by past poisons. Staring clear-eyed into the expanse of second chances, I found myself eager to begin anew. I won the lottery, and I'm leaving you, Lila. It's time I found someone who truly believes in me. The words hung in the air like a suffocating fog as Derek stared me down across the living room. My heart pounded, threatening to burst from my chest. This had to be some sick joke. "What are you saying?" I stammered, glancing at my sister Nora and Derek's friend Alex, who wore equally dumbfounded expressions. Derek's lips curved into a self-satisfied smirk as he produced a lottery ticket from his pocket and waved it in front of my face. "Feast your eyes on our golden ticket to freedom, my dear." My legs felt like jelly as the gravity of his announcement hit me. You won the lottery? And you're leaving me?" "That's right," he nodded, his eyes narrowing. "I'm finally getting out from under your doubting shadow and living like I deserve with someone who supports my dreams." The cruel insinuation of his words stung like acid. Was this truly the man I married 5 years ago? The one who once showered me with affection and appreciation? "Derek, I've always supported you," I cried out, desperate for him to see reason. "Your inventions, your business ideas, I believed in you every step of the way." He let out a mocking laugh. "You expect me to believe that? I saw the skepticism in your eyes whenever I pitched a new concept, the way you'd grit your teeth and nod along, just indulging my silly fantasies." My mouth hung open, a retort dying on my lips as my mind raced for a counter-argument. How could I convince him of something he was so resolutely convinced wasn't true? "You're delusional." Nora's shrill voice pierced the tension, her eyes blazing as she stepped forward. "Lila has been nothing but a supportive, loving wife to your sorry ass." "Stay out of this," Derek snarled at her, whipping his gaze back to me. "I'm doing us both a favor and sparing you the agony of waiting for me to succeed. With this lottery jackpot, I can finally surround myself with people who genuinely want to see me soar." As his vicious words swirled around me, stealing the breath from my lungs, the true depth of his betrayal became painstakingly clear. He wasn't just leaving me, he was leaving me for someone else. Someone he claimed appreciated his ambitions in a way I apparently hadn't. I opened my mouth to speak, to hurl back the venom he'd spewed at me, but Nora beat me to it. "You low-life scumbag," she shouted, lunging forward as if to attack, before Alex swiftly wrapped his arms around her, restraining her flailing limbs. "Don't you dare stand there and act like you're doing Lila a favor. You're just a selfish snake looking to trade her in for some young, naive thing who worships your ego." Derek's eyes widened momentarily at her outburst, before narrowing again in derision. "You'll see," he muttered darkly. "You'll all see." With that parting shot, he spun on his heel and stormed out, slamming the front door behind him with a resounding thud that shook the walls. In the ensuing silence, I sank shakily onto the couch, the lottery ticket still clutched in my trembling hands. The stark numbers seemed to taunt me. A prize beyond my wildest dreams that should have been a joyous blessing, now marred by the harsh reality of the husband who had won it. This was my life now. My marriage in shambles, my heart in pieces. All because Derek had come into an obscene amount of money and allowed it to warp his perception of everything we once had. As tears streamed down my cheeks, I felt Nora's arms encircle me from behind, her quiet sobs mingling with mine. Beside us, Alex stared off into the distance, his expression haunted by the ugly scene he'd just witnessed. This was the hand I'd been dealt. But no amount of wealth was worth sacrificing my dignity, my self-worth. Derek's cruel rejection would not be my undoing. It would be the spark that ignited an unquenchable fire of vengeance within me. He wanted to see someone who truly believed in him? I'd make sure the whole world saw Derek Jefferson for the delusional, egomaniacal traitor he really was. The next few days passed in a blur of anger, heartache, and disbelief. Derek's words continued to echo in my mind, that outrageous claim of me not believing in his dreams. The more I relived that terrible night, the more convinced I became that his insane justification for leaving hid an even uglier truth. "There has to be more to this," I told Nora one morning over coffee, my hands trembling as I clutched the ceramic mug. "Derek has lost his mind if he truly believes the lies he's telling himself." Nora nodded grimly. That arrogant jackass is hiding something, I know it. She leaned forward, her brow furrowed. Have you tried calling him again? 12 times, I sighed. He's not answering. Of course not. He's too busy rolling around in his lottery millions with his new delusional worshipper by his side. My fists clenched involuntarily at her words. There's no way he's dumb enough to blow all that money catering to the whims of some vapid gold-digging hussy. Except the more I thought about it, the more it made twisted sense. My throat constricted as a horrid suspicion formed. Oh, God. What if that's his plan? What if he's already found a woman just as narcissistic as he is, who will happily live off his winnings while feeding his ego? You think he's got someone lined up already? Nora looked aghast. That's low, even for him. Jaw clenched. I dug out my phone and began scrolling through missed calls, finally hovering over the contact info for Alex, Derek's best friend from college. He always saw through Derek's bullshit. Maybe he had some insight. The line rang twice before Alex answered, his tone guarded. Lila, what's up? I need to know everything, I stated bluntly, taking a fortifying sip of coffee. Everything you know about what's really going on with Derek and his big lottery dreams. There was a heavy pause before Alex sighed heavily. To be honest, I'm not sure I want to get in the middle of this mess. White-hot anger flared within me, burning away my composure. Don't give me that crap, I snapped, my voice rising. Your idiot buddy just destroyed a 5-year marriage based on one insane, narcissistic delusion after another. You're damn right you need to get in the middle of it and tell me what you know. Another pause. Then, okay, you're right. I could picture Alex rubbing his temples as he continued in a low voice. A couple weeks ago, Derek was bragging to me about how he scored big with that lottery prize. He exhaled heavily. But he also mentioned some girl he'd been seeing behind your back, an influencer or something, way younger than him. What? I gasped, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut as the reality sank in. He's been cheating on me? Yeah, and from what I could gather, his big plan was to use the lottery money to wine and dine this chick into being his new guaranteed pay pig for life, all while making it seem like she's just this huge supporter of his entrepreneurial spirit or whatever. The mug slipped from my hand, shattering on the floor and splashing hot coffee across the tile. Derek's betrayal sliced through me deeper than any serrated blade ever could. Not only was he leaving me in the cruelest way imaginable, he was happily trading me in for the shallower pleasures of a materialistic, status-obsessed bimbo. As if sensing my inner turmoil, Alex continued in a wary tone. I tried warning him that what he was doing was beyond screwed up, but you know how Derek gets when his mind is made up on something crazy. I always thought his arrogance stemmed from some deep-seated insecurity, I said thickly, my throat burning with unshed tears. But this is a new low that I never imagined. Through the haze of shock and heartbreak, one thought began to take form. A terrible, irresistible desire to make Derek pay for the anguish he'd put me through, to show him the consequences of his betrayal, starting with the woman he meant to discard me for. I met Nora's gaze, an unspoken understanding passing between us. Get me everything you can on this so-called influencer, I stated, my voice hard. Every social media account, every fan page, anything to give me ammunition against the little harlot trying to steal my husband. Nora's lips curved into a vindictive smirk. Oh, I'll do better than that, sis. She whipped out her phone, fingers flying across the screen. By the time we're done, this attention-starved bimbo is going to wish she never laid eyes on Derek Jefferson's selfish ass. My own smile mirrored the icy promise of vengeance brewing within me. The delusion was over. Derek and his new prize were about to face the harsh sting of reality, and I would be the one delivering the painful wake-up call. That low-life scumbag! The words erupted from my lips like venom as I slammed my palms on the kitchen table, glaring at the picture of Derek grinning next to his vapid influencer fling. Alex shifted uncomfortably beside me, his expression pained. I know, Lila. Believe me, seeing him throw away your marriage for this bimbo makes me sick too. Well, we're going to make him regret it. My voice dripped with steely determination as I turned to face my unexpected ally. In the aftermath of Derek's bombshell betrayal, it was Alex who had stepped up as a steady source of support and inside information. While Nora busied herself uncovering every sordid detail about the social media starlet latching onto my ex like a parasite, Alex had filled me in on more of Derek's twisted motivations. Apparently, Derek's lottery delusion ran even deeper than I'd realized. He was convinced this cam model with a rapper bod, as Nora crudely dubbed her, was the only one who could appreciate his entrepreneurial spirit. The perfect accessory to flaunt his wealth and prop up his crumbling ego. "We have to hit him where it hurts, take away the two things he cares about most," Alex stated grimly. "His money and his inflated sense of self-importance." I nodded, my jaw setting. "And thanks to you, I have the evidence to do just that concerning his lottery winnings." A twisted smile played across my lips as I retrieved the faded convenience store photo tucked in my pocket, an image of Alex, Derek, and I smiling and holding up our fateful lottery ticket from years ago. The very ticket Derek was now trying to claim full ownership over. Once the truth comes out about us being partners on this prize, his plans to bankroll a lavish lifestyle for himself and his new arm candy fling are going to hit one hell of a financial roadblock. Not to mention the PR nightmare it'll cause when the world realizes what an egotistical, manipulative dirtbag he really is. Nora strode into the room, fire blazing in her eyes as she slapped a thick manila folder on the table. "Speaking of which, I've got enough dirt on the so-called influencer to make their heads spin." Sliding the folder toward me, she flipped it open to reveal a myriad of social media posts. Selfies of the heavily made-up, surgically enhanced blonde posing and pouting, her shrill captions overflowing with narcissistic hashtags and vapid catchphrases. Her real name is Belinda Stone, 24 years young and dumb as a brick. Nora's tone dripped with contempt. Originally from a wealthy family who cut her off once she got too absorbed chasing internet fame and fortune to care about anything else. My stomach churned with revulsion as I absorbed the evidence of this woman's unabashed vanity, materialism, and willful ignorance. No wonder Derek was enamored. She was essentially a funhouse mirror version of himself. "We have to take her down, along with that ego-bloated pig she's parading around with," I declared, steadying my nerves with a deep inhale. "Expose every dirty secret, every con, every pathetic ploy for attention they're attempting to pull." Alex let out a low whistle as he scanned the damning information Nora had gathered. "Starting to feel sorry for these two, the more I see how sadistic your revenge is going to be." A harsh laugh escaped my lips. "Don't feel too sorry, they're the ones reaping what they sowed." Resting a hand on the folder, I met Alex's gaze, my eyes hardening. Once the world sees them for the shallow, manipulative frauds they are, Derek and his little harlot won't have an ounce of admiration or respect left to feed their delusional narcissism. A grim smile crossed Nora's face as she gave a resolute nod. "Time to watch the shit hit the fan, sis." I mirrored her expression, feeling the familiar flames of rage mingle with a deep, vindictive satisfaction. Indeed it is. Derek wanted to see someone who truly believed in him? By the time I was through, the whole world would see just how unworthy he was of anyone's belief or devotion. The painful downfall of his sickening delusions would serve as the harshest slap of reality. And I wouldn't stop until his despicable arrogance was shattered into a million irreparable pieces. This better work. The hushed words slipped through clenched teeth as I stared at the screen, watching the final edits to the video Nora had meticulously crafted. My sister flashed me a reassuring smirk. "Relax, sis. This is like dangling bloody chum in front of a great white shark. Belinda will take the bait, hook, line, and sinker." I shuddered inwardly, still uneasy about deploying such underhanded tactics. But after learning the full extent of Derek's betrayal and Belinda's part in it, any moral compunctions I had were overshadowed by my thirst for vengeance. They needed to pay. To have their deceit and shallowness shoved back in their smug faces for the whole world to witness. Nodding resolutely, I clicked the upload button, and within seconds the video began spreading across the internet like a virus. A perfectly curated look at the affluent, glamorous life I was now supposedly leading post-divorce. Strategic shots highlighted a luxurious and tastefully decorated home, designer clothes and accessories draped across every surface, even a sleek new sports car parked in the driveway with a bright red bow planted on the hood. Of course, none of it was real. just one big, elaborately staged deception made possible through Nora's media connections and an underground production team specializing in fabricating fake realities. That smug tramp won't know what hit her. Nora grinned viciously, scrolling through the slew of comments already pouring in from confused onlookers, speculating about my newfound wealth. Holy crap, look at all the thirsty dudes already slobbering over those bikini shots, she let out a mocking laugh. I almost feel bad for how badly we're going to break their desperate little hearts. Any glimmer of guilt I felt was extinguished as I stared at the still images showcasing my toned body draped in attention-grabbing swimwear around a glistening private pool. A far cry from the modest one-pieces I usually favored. Plastering on a saccharine smile and pouty expression took more effort than I cared to admit. But playing into the delusion, putting on a facade, was the only way to make this sting as painfully as it needed to for Belinda and Derek. Because that was their greatest downfall, letting ego and vanity blind them from appreciating what really mattered in life. Integrity, honor, mutual understanding and sacrifice in a relationship rather than selfish delusion. Does this go too far? I asked uncertainly, watching the spectacle spread further across various social platforms. I mean, is there a line we're crossing into dangerous territory? Alex's voice made me jump as he emerged from the kitchen, a mug of coffee in hand. Nah, don't overthink it. You're just giving the soulless narcissists a taste of their own medicine. There was an edge of bitterness to his tone that surprised me, but I supposed seeing his oldest friend spiraling into egomaniacal delusion would breed resentment in anyone. Soon as Belinda thinks you've become the richer, spiteful ex out for revenge against Derek through shameless flaunting, she'll come sniffing around to ingratiate herself. Alex shook his head in disgust. Self-preservation is all that talentless leech cares about. Exactly. Nora stabbed a finger at the screen, where several tabloid reports were already emerging about my mysterious new fortune. She'll see this diamond-studded opportunity dangling in front of her shallow eyes and do whatever it takes to latch on. Glancing between my co-conspirators, I felt a swell of gratitude for their unwavering support and willingness to go to such depraved lengths in the name of karma and revenge. I couldn't have executed such an elaborate ruse alone. With a steadying breath, I straightened my shoulders and tightened my resolve. Whatever lines we had to cross in the coming days, it would all be worth it to pry Derek and Belinda out of their self-indulgent fantasies. Once their true, ugly natures were exposed under the harsh global spotlight, not even their ill-gotten lottery winnings could shield them from the crushing downfall that awaited. This charade would either make them face reality or completely unhinge them as their world of delusion came crumbling down. And I would be the merciless instigator, ensuring that total cathartic ruination occurred. The shrill ring of my phone shattered the tense silence that had settled over the room. Nora and I exchanged a loaded glance before I snatched it up, my heart pounding. Hello? Lila? Oh my God, is it really you? The sugary sweet voice on the other end made my skin crawl with revulsion. It's Belinda. I had to resist the urge to hurl the phone across the room. Of course, the vapid leech was slithering her way back into my life, her greed overriding any sense of shame or decency. Fighting to keep my tone even, I replied, Yes, it's me, Belinda. I take it you've seen the footage circulating about my new lifestyle? Girl, yes, it's absolutely incredible, she gushed in that gratingly vacuous way of hers. I mean, those houses, those cars, those designer bikinis, you're living the dream. My lip curled involuntarily. If only this delusional bimbo knew the true extent of her mistakes in aligning herself with a man like Derek. But she would soon enough. Well, I'll admit the past few months have been... I paused, as if considering my words carefully. Liberating, shedding the dead weight from my life and stepping into my own self-made fortune has been euphoric, really. A heavy silence fell as Belinda absorbed the not-so-subtle dig at my ex-husband and her new money-grubbing beau. But her desperation for hollow status symbols eventually overpowered any reluctance. You know, I always had a feeling you were too good for that loser, she cooed, her phony sweetness morphing into undisguised envy, especially now that he's squandering away those lottery millions on ridiculous pipe dreams that are doomed to fail. I inhaled sharply, equal parts disgusted and infuriated by her blatant attempt to drive a wedge between Derek and myself. As if basking in her ill-gotten gains wasn't enough, she had to try and twist the knife more. "Well, you're certainly free to think what you want about Derek's life choices," I replied coolly, catching Nora's gaze and giving an infinitesimal nod. She sprang into action immediately, keying up the prepared video files and patching through to the live feed I had routed to every major news network. "Although," I continued smoothly, staring dead ahead at the camera light now blinking, "I think the world deserves to hear your take on things from your own lying, opportunistic mouth." There was a confused pause before Belinda's sugary tone hardened with suspicion. "Lila? What are you talking ab?" But her words were drowned out by a deafening feedback whine as our call was broadcast on every screen from Times Square to L.A. Her perfectly made-up face, twisted in bewilderment, suddenly plastered across millions of homes. "You see, Belinda," I stated, my voice ringing with furious conviction, "my newfound wealth is just as much of a facade as your self-proclaimed influence over the sad, desperate fools who hang on your every Instagram post." Leaning forward, I braced my hands on the desk and leveled my gaze directly at the camera's unblinking eye. "The truth is, we've all been taken for a ride by two outrageous con artists, consumed by delusion, greed, and their own narcissistic pursuit of fame and fortune at any cost." My finger stabbed viciously at the image of Derek now appearing beside Belinda, his expression one of abject horror as he realized our private conversation was being broadcast for the world to hear. "This low-life scumbag you've so readily attached your vapid ambitions to didn't just cheat on his wife and mother of his children, he tried to claim the entirety of a lottery jackpot. He didn't even win alone." I was shaking with rage, but a vicious sort of glee burned within me at seeing the blood drain from Derek's face as the video feed switched to authenticated footage of him, Alex, and I purchasing the fateful lotto ticket years ago. Every duplicitous act, every underhanded scheme, every conniving lie that both Derek and Belinda had spun to feed their ego, I unleashed it all in one brutal, damning torrent, letting the truth scorch away their fragile delusions before a captive audience of millions. And as the look of smug indifference melted off Belinda's face to be replaced by abject horror, I felt a twisted sense of gratification at the fractures already splintering through her and Derek's sad, self-indulgent fantasies. This was only the beginning of their downfall. I would make sure of it. I would not rest until their hollow lives were shattered into a million pieces, paying penance for every ounce of pain and disillusionment they'd put me through. Steeling my nerves, I met Derek's terrified gaze burning through the screen and allowed a cold smirk to crease my lips. "This is for all those times you accused me of never believing in you, Derek. Well, believe me when I say, this nightmare is only just beginning." The ballroom was packed, every eye locked on the center stage as I ascended the steps and approached the podium. My heels clicked loudly against the polished wood, the only sound in that breathless hush. This was it, the final phase of my months-long vendetta. One last chance to drive the knife into the rotting heart of Derek and Belinda's sham relationship before a crowd of their erstwhile admirers. One corner of my mouth curled into a vindictive smirk. They'd slithered their way onto the guest list for this self-congratulatory gala, under the delusion they could ingratiate themselves, soil their way into high society's good graces. Little did those two vapid fools realize they were the ones being played for fools. The air was thick with palpable tension as I reached the podium. Leaning forward, I let my eyes bore into the squirming figures of Derek and Belinda situated at a front table, their arrogant expressions crumbling beneath my unrelenting glare. "Friends, esteemed colleagues," I began, my voice rippling through the cavernous chamber. "I'd like to extend my gratitude for your presence here tonight at this annual celebration of entrepreneurial spirit and community innovation." Murmurs of polite applause spread through the crowd before I silenced them with an upraised hand. However, as many of you are no doubt aware, there exists a serpent lurking in our midst. I paused, letting the weight of my next words sink in. A vile deceiver who has brazenly perverted the symbols of success and self-made prosperity we honor here for his own ego-driven delusions of grandeur. Belinda bristled at the obvious slight, shooting an accusatory glare at Derek, who shrank in his chair like a kicked dog. How bitterly ironic that his craving for validation had turned the woman he sought it from against him within moments. "You all know who I'm referring to," I stated, my lip curling with disgust. "Derek Jefferson, a narcissistic, emotionally stunted leech who lied, cheated, and manipulated everyone around him in pursuit of the trappings of fortune." It was like a dam bursting at those words, the once polite crowd erupting into shouts of condemnation and outrage. Caught completely off guard by my vicious assault, Derek jerked upright, his eyes swiveling in panic. "That's not true," he barked futilely over the din, before pointing a shaking finger at me. "She's the one who never believed in me, who tried to tear me down at every turn." The crowd's scorn intensified tenfold at his pitiful deflection, hisses and boos raining down on him until his face purpled. "Silence!" I roared, raising my voice above the furor. As the room stilled once more, I leaned towards the podium, lips curling into a sneer. "I did believe in you, Derek. I believed you were a good man once, until your arrogance and greed twisted you into this delusional, hate-filled stranger before us now." My steely gaze landed on Belinda next, watching her shrink under my withering contempt. "As for your pathetic sidekick, well, need I say more than she's living proof of the depths to which you've allowed your ambition and ego to corrode your morality and self-worth?" Slamming my palms on the podium, I straightened, fury blazing in my eyes. "So go ahead, shroud yourselves in as much counterfeit wealth and materialism as you desire to mask your inescapable insecurities. At your empty, rotted cores, you're nothing more than snake oil salesmen, profiteering off lies and exploiting the ambitions of others for your own soulless gain." From the back of the ballroom, a loud cry cut through the silence. "You make me sick, man." I smirked, recognizing Alex's voice as he stepped forward, derision etched across his face as he locked eyes with the man he once considered a friend. "All this time using people and spinning lies to support your sad power trip? And for what?" As the crowd swelled around him with murmurs of agreement, Alex jabbed an accusing finger at the stunned pair. "You gave up relationships, sacrificed integrity, your entire value system, all for this flagrant ego trip of a sham empire. Well, joke's on you, Jefferson, because the only thing more bankrupt than your finances is your self-respect." Somewhere within the throng of voices condemning them, I heard Belinda's shrill tones pleading with Derek for answers, demanding to know the extent of his latest betrayal. Their toxic, symbiotic relationship of narcissism and self-delusion finally fracturing under its own weight. At the eye of the storm, Derek resembled a scared child, stunned into silence by the harsh, unrelenting reality crashing down upon him. The karmic wheel spinning payback for his inflicted unraveling. Meeting my gaze one last time, his eyes held the slightest flicker of raw emotion. Fear, betrayal, simmering hatred, all roiling together. In that moment I reflected not on the monster he'd become, but the man whose love and faith I'd once cherished. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anguish, just empty vindication. And as the roaring wave of scorn swallowed him whole, I turned my back and strode away, content to let the tides of public opinion and karma's bitter justice sweep Derek under for good, this time. The roar of the crowd was deafening as I stepped out into the marbled lobby, flanked by Nora and Alex. But the vengeful cheers and chants felt strangely hollow, like a dull thud reverberating through my bones. "I can't believe we finally did it," Nora breathed, her eyes alight with vindictive triumph. That oily snake and his cheap tramp got exactly what was coming to them. I should have felt elated in that moment. Relieved that my months-long quest to expose Derek and Belinda's sham had reached its climactic peak. Instead, I only felt numb. Perhaps it was the sobering reminder that no amount of public shaming or loss of status could undo the damage of Derek's ultimate betrayal. Or maybe, deep down, I mourned having to bury the shredded remnants of the man I once loved. A familiar voice shattered my turbulent thoughts. Well, if it isn't the mastermind herself. Derek's acidic sneer hit me like a slap as he pushed through the crowd still loitering outside, Belinda trailing miserably behind him. You ruined everything." The blonde's voice cracked with equal parts fury and despair as she rounded on me. "All that effort, all those lies and manipulations trying to claw my way into high society, undone by your sad, jealous revenge ploy. I regarded her coolly as she fought to maintain her poise, straightening her bedazzled gown with trembling hands. I may have been delusionally chasing vapid social status and wealth, but at least I still have my dignity. She spat the words with as much venom as she could muster amidst the tattered ruins of her facade. You're a sad, empty husk masquerading as a self-righteous icon of morality, Derek hissed, his eyes glittering with pure venom. But I see the truth. Lila, you're just as desperate and spiteful as the day I left you behind. His lips twisted into a mocking leer. Couldn't handle the fact that I'd finally surpassed your meager expectations for me, risen above the limitations you tried shackling me. The delusional rant was cut off by a harsh slap, the crack echoing through the lobby. Derek recoiled, clutching his reddened cheek as Alex stepped forward, eyes blazing. That's enough out of you, you arrogant bastard. His voice dripped with disgust. The fact you're still trying to play the martyr here just proves how completely delusional you are. Derek opened his mouth to respond, but Alex barreled onwards. You were my friend once, Derek. We had dreams, ambitions, but you let greed and narcissism consume you until you alienated everyone who gave a damn. Shaking his head slowly, he glanced over at the shuddering wreck of a woman clinging to Derek's arm. Both of you deserve each other's vapid, hollow company, living the rest of your days shrouded in self-denial and meaningless status trappings. Alex's gaze hardened into a glare as it swung back to lock with Derek's, his voice turning to steel. I just hope, when you hit rock bottom after poisoning yourselves on those delusions, that you remember what it cost you to throw away everyone who actually gave a damn. A tense silence fell over the lobby, until I felt Nora's hand on my arm, pulling me gently away. Come on, sis, let's leave these sad losers to rot in the mess of their own making. As we turned to head for the exit, Belinda's voice rang out, desperate and pleading. Wait! She lurched forward, clutching Derek's arm in a white-knuckled grip. Just tell me one thing, Lila. Her eyes searched mine, wide and haunted. Is it true? Was everything a lie? This whole relationship, Derek's ambitions, our entire future planned out together? For a moment I considered lying to her, letting her delude herself a little longer before the imminent crash back to reality. But one look at the broken shell of a woman before me, and I knew even the slightest white lie would be too cruel. Yes, Belinda, I stated simply, letting the truth sink in like a dagger between her ribs. It was all a lie, just empty delusions built on a foundation of greed and ego. Derek regarded me with a mix of fury and dawning horror, as if the gravity of what he'd sacrificed was just starting to take hold. But I felt no pity, no sorrow, only the faintest twinge of lamentful nostalgia for the man whose potential had led me to fall for him once upon a time. Lacing my fingers through Nora's, I guided us past the dissolving wreckage of Derek and Belinda's sham relationship without a second glance. As the revolving doors closed behind us, I steeled myself for the new chapter awaiting me beyond this painful era. Stripping the scales of delusion from my eyes was just the start of a long journey towards rediscovering my self-worth and independence. But at least now I could begin that path unburdened by the hollow shackles of arrogance and lies that had dragged me down for far too long. Chapter 8. New Beginnings. 6 months later, I stood in the shadow of the gleaming high-rise that housed my new business headquarters and took a deep, contented breath. The brisk spring air was a welcome tonic, a sensory reminder of the fresh start and rebirth I was finally allowing myself after so many months of being bogged down in darkness and anger. Can you believe this place, sis? Nora looped her arm through mine, her eyes shining with pride as she surveyed our newly established empire. All stemming from that vindictive little revenge scheme that put that douchebag Derek in his place. My lips quirked into a small smile. In the aftermath of my very public dismantling of my ex-husband's rampant delusions, the settlement I received from our divorce proceedings, coupled with my share of the lottery winnings, had afforded me ample opportunity to invest in new ventures. And with Nora's marketing and branding genius as my co-pilot, We rapidly transformed that influx of cash into a burgeoning multimedia corporation dedicated to empowering women who'd suffered at the hands of greedy, self-serving men like Derek. It was strangely fitting, really, allowing the ashes of my former marriage to smolder and ignite the flames of a new, self-made legacy. A firm rebuttal to the notion I had ever tried to stifle Derek's dreams and ambitions. The guy was a delusional, narcissistic train wreck from day one. I just happened to be the one miraculously cashing in on the fallout. You know, Alex is still reeling over us donating a chunk of our launch capital to his counseling program for disadvantaged youth. Nora shook her head in amazement. Guy was practically in tears when he found out. He deserves it, I stated simply, squeezing her arm. God knows he endured enough turmoil sticking by us through the darkest stretches of that whole sordid mess with Derek and Belinda. A twisted smirk crossed my lips as I recalled the high-profile legal battle erupted when Alex contested the lottery winnings. Derek's snarling, bombastic attempts to claim the whole jackpot for himself were swiftly shut down by a mountain of authenticated evidence and a restraining order. Meanwhile, Belinda's desperate gambit to sue me for defamation and emotional damages imploded before it even left the ground after the avalanche of receipts I produced, exposing her as a shameless con artist and grifter only out for self-gain. By the time the dust settled, she and Derek were both pariah, bankrupted by legal fees and public scrutiny into their grifting ways. The power couple delusion was shattered utterly, and through it all, Alex remained a steady, supportive ally through the darkest days. A true friend who never judged, only encouraged me to channel the vindictive anger into something constructive. That thought made my steps lighter as I strode into the towering lobby, drinking in the sights and sounds of my creation coming to life. Just off the polished marble floors, a cluster of women from our marketing team huddled around a television monitor, eagerly reviewing edits for our latest female empowerment campaign. "Looking amazing, ladies," I called out, eliciting a chorus of cheers and warm greetings. Behind the front desk, my new assistant looked up and waved, crisp and professional on the outside, with the soul of a fearless fighter against injustice. That was the foundation Nora and I were determined to establish, a blazing torch to illuminate every dark path other women might tread on their quest for rebirth and renewal. As I rode the elevator upwards, my mind drifted back to those dark days when Derek's callous betrayal had nearly broken me. If someone had told me then about the self-made phoenix I would emerge as down the line, I might have laughed at the absurdity of it. Yet here I was, at the precipice of an empire built from the ashes of delusion and deceit. An unstoppable force, fueled by a simple credo: never let ego, complacency, or the agendas of others blind you to your own potential and self-worth. The doors slid open to reveal my corner office awaiting, a sprawling, sunlit sanctuary of inspiration and possibility. Striding to the floor-to-ceiling windows, I let my gaze roam across the endless cityscape sprawled out below. This life, this invigorating hustle and soaring ambition, it was the polar opposite to the empty, vapid delusions Derek once accused me of stunting. And in that moment, I felt pity for him more than anything. An eternity confined to his own narcissistic hell while I flourished in the light. That was the ultimate revenge. As I settled into my plush leather chair, the phone began ringing shrilly, jarring me from my reverie. With a self-assured smile, I scooped up the receiver. "Lila Jefferson," I answered crisply. "Let's get to work."